The bells of London did not stop ringing in the summer of 1665. Parish by parish, week by week, the tolls marked a city in retreat from an invisible contagion. Streets once crowded with carts and apprentices fell silent. Doors were sealed. Grass grew in neglected lanes. By the year's end, more than 70,000 Londoners were dead, and some contemporaries believed the true number was far higher.
Mary Brown, aged 30,
in a matter of months,
16th
England's
April.
largest city had been transformed into a landscape of fear, isolation, and staggering loss.
I steady the plank.
The Great Plague of 1665 did not strike a city unprepared by history.
It holds firm.
Bubonic plague had visited England repeatedly since the Black Death of the 14th century. London in the mid-17th century was a growing metropolis of perhaps 450,000 to 500,000 people, tightly packed within medieval walls and spreading into surrounding suburbs. Timber-framed houses leaned over narrow streets. Open drains ran along thoroughfares. Waste disposal was inconsistent. Rats thrived in warehouses and cellars, particularly along the busy Thames waterfront, where ships arrived daily from ports across Europe. The immediate origins of the 1665 outbreak are generally traced to the parish of St. Giles in the Fields, just outside the city walls. In the winter of 1664, deaths began to rise in that district. Parish records indicate that several fatalities were attributed to plague early in 1665, though officials initially attempted to downplay the threat. London had experienced sporadic plague outbreaks before. Authorities hoped this would be another limited episode. But by late spring, the weekly bills of mortality, printed summaries of deaths across the city, began to show an unmistakable pattern. Plague deaths were increasing steadily. Modern epidemiology identifies the disease as caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, transmitted primarily through fleas carried by rats. 17th century Londoners did not understand microbial transmission. Explanations varied. Some physicians blamed miasmas, corrupted air arising from filth or decaying matter.
Careful now, mind the hoops.
Others cited
Next bundle,
unfavorable
on three.
planetary alignments. Public health measures were based on observation rather than scientific knowledge, yet they reflected a practical awareness that close contact facilitated spread. By June 1665, the outbreak could no longer be minimized. Plague deaths rose sharply, especially in poorer parishes. The disease typically manifested with fever, weakness, and painful swellings known as buboes. Many victims died within days. Mortality was highest in densely populated districts where households were large and sanitation inadequate. Wealthier residents, observing the rising death toll, began to leave the city. Carriages clogged the roads north and west as merchants, lawyers, and minor gentry retreated to country estates. King Charles II and his court departed London in July, relocating first to Salisbury and later to Oxford. The removal of the royal court signaled the gravity of the crisis. Government administration continued in reduced form, but many central functions were disrupted. Trade slowed dramatically. Theaters were closed. Public gatherings were restricted. The city that had only recently regained its vibrancy after the political turmoil of the English Civil Wars and the Restoration now faced a different kind of emergency. Municipal authorities, led by the Lord Mayor and aldermen, implemented a series of measures intended to contain the disease. Orders were published regulating burials, movement, and sanitation. Houses in which plague cases were identified were shut up for 40 days. A red cross was painted on the door, accompanied by the words "Lord have mercy upon us." Watchmen were stationed outside to ensure that inhabitants did not leave.
Can I play
These
with
measures
it?
aimed to prevent infected
Not yet, it's
individuals from
heavy.
circulating in the streets, but they also confined healthy family members alongside the sick, increasing hardship and, in some cases, transmission within households. Special plague burial grounds were established as churchyards filled. The usual rhythms of parish life were disrupted. Clergy continued to record deaths and administer last rites where possible, though some ministers
Summer,
fled.
1665.
Others
Narrow
remained and
alleys lined
died.
with timber from London.
Physicians who
Residents
stayed
in
faced
worn wool
overwhelming
garments moved with
demand.
quiet caution.
Medical
restrained
practice included
portrait of a
bleeding,
shadowed
herbal
time.
remedies, and aromatic fumigations, none of which altered the course of the disease but reflected prevailing theory. As summer advanced, the weekly death toll escalated. In late August and early September, recorded plague deaths exceeded 6,000 per week. The bills of mortality for the week ending September 12, 1665 reported over 7,000 plague deaths, the highest weekly figure of the epidemic. Historians debate the accuracy of these records. Underreporting was possible, especially in poorer districts. Quarantine enforcement was uneven. Some families concealed cases to avoid confinement.
Is all secured? We must
Even
depart
so,
soon.
the scale of
children are ready,
mortality
husband.
was unprecedented in living memory.
All strapped tight, sir.
Economic life contracted severely. Many shops closed as owners fled or died. Artisans and laborers found themselves without employment. River traffic diminished. International trade was affected as foreign ports imposed quarantines on English ships. The cloth industry, a central pillar of England's economy, experienced disruption as
The hour
markets
for
shrank.
departure is upon us.
Prices
Aye,
for
sir, the
food
saddles are
fluctuated.
secure. To horse,
Although
then.
there was no complete
We ride.
collapse of provisioning, distribution was strained. Charitable relief became essential. Parish officials collected funds to support the poor who were unable to work. The city arranged for the delivery of food to quarantined households. Records show expenditures for bread, meat, and coal distributed to the shut-in. Without such assistance, many would have faced starvation in addition to disease. Yet resources were limited, and administrative capacity was stretched. Fear shaped daily behavior.
Gentlemen, the plague
Those who could
orders.
afford it
We must
avoided
act.
crowded places.
Indeed, my lord, the searches are
Public
key.
prayer days were
And the
proclaimed.
shutting of houses.
Some individuals
A harsh
turned to
measure, but
religious
necessary.
reflection, interpreting the plague as divine judgment, a common framework in early modern Europe. At the same time, authorities sought to suppress practices believed to worsen contagion, including large assemblies. Printed pamphlets circulated offering medical advice and spiritual counsel. London's print culture documented the crisis even as it unfolded. The plague did not affect all areas equally. Mortality was highest in the outer
air is
parishes
heavy
and poorer
today.
neighborhoods, where
When
housing
can we go
density
out?
was greatest.
Not until the
Wealthier
sickness passes,
districts
child.
within the city walls, though
You
not
must be
spared,
patient.
experienced
Aye.
comparatively lower rates. This uneven impact reflected differences in living conditions and mobility. The departure of many affluent residents reduced exposure in some areas while concentrating vulnerability among those unable to leave. By October 1665, cooler weather coincided with a decline in new cases. The weekly death toll began to fall steadily. Historians caution against attributing the decline solely to temperature. Epidemic cycles are influenced by multiple factors, including changes in rat and flea populations and the depletion of susceptible hosts. Nonetheless, by late autumn the worst had passed. Official plague deaths for 1665 totaled approximately 68,596. Contemporary observers suggested that the true figure exceeded 75,000, possibly approaching 100,000 when unrecorded cases are considered. In a city of 500,000, the demographic impact was profound. The social consequences extended beyond mortality. Thousands of children were orphaned. Apprenticeships were disrupted as masters died. Property changed hands rapidly in some districts due to inheritance. Labor shortages emerged in certain trades, temporarily raising wages for surviving workers. Conversely, the influx of rural migrants in subsequent years would rebalance the workforce as London recovered.
Bread for
Political
the sealed
authority had been
household.
tested but not overturned. The
leave
civic
it by the door.
administration continued to function, albeit imperfectly. The monarchy's absence from London
Careful,
did
the
not result in
pestilence clings to
insurrection,
all.
a notable contrast
Bless
to
you,
the
this will
civil
warm us.
conflict of the
God
previous
keep you.
decades.
Is there bread, Mother?
The crisis
Aye, and
reinforced the
herbs.
importance
We
of
shall
urban
manage.
governance and record-keeping. The bills of mortality, which had long existed, gained renewed significance as instruments of public awareness and administrative planning. The Great Plague also influenced patterns of urban development. In 1666, only a year after the epidemic subsided, the Great Fire of London destroyed much of the city. Though the fire was a separate catastrophe, its rebuilding phase allowed for modest improvements in street widening and building materials. Brick and stone gradually replaced timber in central districts, reducing fire risk and, indirectly, altering environments that had harbored vermin. While it would be inaccurate to claim that the plague directly caused these architectural changes, the combined impact of disease and fire reshaped London's physical and demographic landscape. Public health practices evolved incrementally.
The air is
Quarantine
cooler now.
measures, though harsh, demonstrated an early
streets
form of
feel less
organized
empty.
disease control. Port regulations
but the
became
fear
more
lingers in
systematic
every
in
shadows.
subsequent decades, with ships subject to inspection and isolation when arriving from infected regions. The experience of 1665 contributed to a growing recognition among European cities that coordinated responses were necessary during epidemics. Culturally, the plague left a deep imprint. Diaries and letters from the period provide detailed accounts of daily life under threat. Samuel Pepys, a naval administrator, recorded the progression of the epidemic in his diary, noting both official responses and personal anxieties. Parish registers preserved the names of thousands who died, embedding the catastrophe within family histories across generations. Yet as years passed, London resumed its expansion. Commerce revived. Population levels recovered within decades. The Great Plague of 1665 was the last
These
major
deeds
outbreak
grant you
of
the
bubonic
London
plague in
estate.
England.
I accept.
Smaller, localized
Agreed.
cases occurred later
The
in the
seal binds
century,
our word.
but none approached the scale of
done.
this epidemic. By the 18th century, plague had largely receded from Western Europe, though it persisted in other regions of the world. The reasons for its disappearance remain debated among historians and epidemiologists, involving complex interactions of ecology, climate, urban change, and trade patterns. In assessing the 1665 epidemic,
The
it
returns
is
to
essential to
southward are still
distinguish
incomplete.
between
They were to
contemporary
arrive
interpretation
yesterday.
and modern
Pestilence
analysis.
has delayed the carriers.
17th century
proceed with what we
Londoners
have.
confronted the crisis
I shall
without
draft a
knowledge of
reminder.
bacteria or
Hurry!
vectors.
The flames are
Their
spreading!
measures were shaped by prevailing theories yet often grounded in pragmatic
Hurry
observation.
up, but stay close!
Isolation
I
of the
got you,
sick,
damn
control
thing.
of movement, and public reporting of deaths were imperfect but structured attempts to manage uncertainty. The scale of
more to hear,
mortality
lads.
revealed both the vulnerabilities of early
the
modern
courses
urban
straight.
life and the resilience of
steady
its
now.
institutions. Within
Now for
months,
the next.
London had lost a substantial fraction of its population. Families were fractured. Economic networks were strained. Religious and civic leaders faced demands beyond precedent.
Captain, your manifest.
And yet the
Here,
city
sir.
endured.
In order.
These
Markets
quantities seem
reopened.
high.
The last voyage
court
was
returned.
prosperous. Check the duties,
Construction
sir.
resumed.
Indeed. Proceed.
The demographic void was gradually filled by migration and natural increase. The tolling bells eventually ceased. The red crosses faded from doors. Parish registers returned to recording ordinary deaths rather than extraordinary waves of contagion. The Great Plague did not end poverty, nor did it end disease. But it marked a defining moment in the history of London, a demonstration of how a densely connected urban center could be transformed by epidemic in a single season. 70,000 recorded dead in months stands as a measure
fine
not
wool,
only of
madam.
loss but
2
of
shillings.
scale, a
I'll give
reminder
1
of the
6.
fragility
Done.
of early modern
Fair
cities
price.
and the evolving
Fresh
strategies
carrots?
societies
This morning,
employed to
a
confront
penny.
infectious disease.
Ironware,
In
fine and
1665,
strong.
London
Hassles.
confronted
Best in
one
the
of the
city.
most severe public
Fresh
health
produce,
crises
fruit,
in its
vegetables.
history.
Look here.
The response
fine
was
hammer
shaped by
for any
limited
trade.
knowledge and constrained resources, yet it laid foundations for more systematic approaches in the centuries that followed. The Great Plague remains a central episode in the city's story, a year when ordinary life was suspended, institutions were tested, and the consequences of contagion were written into the fabric of an expanding capital.